Hi, this is Jürgen Rasmussen. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis blog. I've made a few videos recently about there being no such thing as a self. Videos around the self illusion. I made one video titled The Myth of Self Esteem. And I'm getting some emails from people who are a bit confused and who are asking about tips and resources in terms of meditation and penetrating this whole self illusion. And I thought it was only fair that I made a little video where I outline a couple of the traps that you can easily fall into on this path. So, some traps and some misunderstandings to avoid. So, first of all, when I say that there's no such thing as a self, here's what I mean. I'm not saying that people don't exist. I'm not saying that the activity of personality, so to speak, isn't happening. I'm saying that there's no such thing as a self. So let me offer an analogy. Imagine that I had two different threads, so one white thread and one red thread. Let's say that I intertwine them, you know, really tightly. Now, now it looks like I have a big fat pink thread there. Pink, right? And it really looks that way, and it looks really solid. But if you were to get curious and you came closer and you started to really look at it and play with it, um, it's not so much that pink would disappear. It's more that you would suddenly have the realization that shit, pink was never actually there. It's really just a white thread and a pink thread. So, what we call a self, or the activity of selfing, it really is a verb. So, what happens? A bit like the threads, self-referential thinking appears. Thoughts that contain, me and mine, essentially, and the feeling of I am, the feeling of being a self, a permanent entity over time, and an entity that's kind of in here looking at a world out there that it's separate from, or a self that seems to be separate from experience, that's choosing and deciding and thinking and so on and so forth. Um, this is an activity, and the activity is made up of some threads. So there's usually some body sensations. There's some images, perceptions. There's usually some self-talk and some emotion. These are the threads. And when these threads come up and they kind of tangle together, just like with the pink and just like with the pinkness, the white and the red threads, um, when these elements kind of tangle together, they give the illusion of thing, a thing like self that we are, right? And it seems as if we are that. So what you can do in the same way that you would investigate these threads is that if you meditate and you cultivate concentration, you cultivate sensory clarity, the ability to really kind of dissect and make distinctions about experience, and you meditate on the thinking process. You meditate where you practice seeing thoughts as they arrive. You practice seeing images and self-talk as it arises. You practice feeling sensations and emotions as they arise and making very fine distinctions as to where something starts, where it moves, where it ends, the locations and the shapes. If if you work on your concentration and your sensory clarity and your ability to be really present, and the mind gets really still, you'll see that the activity of selfing, the images and self-talk and body sensations that tangle together and creates the illusion of this thing like self, is an activity that actually emerges and dissolves, emerges and dissolves. And by really watching it and noticing it, you'll see that it functions in very much the same way as with the thread metaphor. And this loosens this whole perception that we are fused with our thoughts. It's an alternative to being lost in thoughts. So the more you can kind of meditate and cultivate and watch selfing as a process appear and disappear, um, the more it's seen to be a collection of thoughts and feelings and to be an illusion of sorts. Now, even if this is deeply seen, the activity of personality doesn't disappear. It may modify somewhat. You're likely to become way less neurotic uh, as a result of it, but because there's less mental activity that orients towards protecting an identity or bolstering or enhancing or protecting a self-image. That begins to loosen the more this illusion is seen through. But the activity of personality is still going on. So what you'll discover with people who have done a lot of meditation and who have made these perceptual shifts is that they often have very strong personalities that are very expressive, very much alive. So it tends to actually free up the activity of personality to a much larger extent. So when we talk about the self being an illusion, uh, the consequence of seeing that is not that someone tends to become, beige or bland or a wallpaper, so to speak. Um, so that's something to become aware of. It actually allows for the free expression of the activity of personality to express itself however it naturally does. Now, here's a little trap. So, in meditation, we very often talk about uh, psychological suffering as being, I got this from Shinsen Young, this particular definition. We very often talk about it as being, thoughts and sensations multiplied by resistance. It's the resistance to certain thoughts and feelings that tend to generate, symptoms. So one trap that you want to avoid when you do self-inquiry work and you start to look into, this illusory self, is that people can very often begin to resist the activity of selfing. That feeling of being an I, or the feeling of seeming to be an I should say, appears. Maybe someone seems to criticize us or praise us or something, and feelings of embarrassment or becoming self-conscious or pride appears as like, oh no, oh no. People can very often mark out the selfing process itself as something bad and begin to resist it. And of course, this also this only increases self-absorption and becoming stuck in selfing. And we might become even more self-occupied and even more self-absorbed uh, as a result. The more you kind of mark out selfing as a taboo or something bad, the more meditation and self-inquiry can actually backfire and have the exact opposite intent or consequence of what is intended. So, what you want to do when you meditate instead is to say yes to the selfing process. Become open and happy and curious whenever that sense of I am appears, and to be able to meet it with presence, with sensory clarity, so that the arising and dissolving of the selfing process can flow freely, just like all other experience. So by saying yes to it, by opening to it, becoming curious and playful and kind of watching it and viewing it as a game, so to speak, will free up your personality tendencies and will make will take the seeming thingness out of the self. Instead of being a particle, it more expresses itself as a wave. So say yes to it, open to it, become playful and curious whenever that sense of being an I or being a self arises. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's easy to become, an arrogant asshole or an enlightened ego, especially initially when doing this sort of stuff. Because remember, the selfing process, it's just one process that's going on. As I talked about in my previous videos, just like the activity of seeing, the activity of hearing, the activity of touching, the activity of digestion. There's the activity of selfing. And selfing is kind of a claiming activity. It's the afterthought, the filler thought that takes credit for other processes and claims to be in charge, right? So so this is how you can often have people who seemingly have had some spiritual insights, but they operate like jerks, and so it's like the enlightened ego, right? So let's say that there is a perceptual as a result of just dumb random luck or happenstance or a meditation practice. This illusion is suddenly seen through. The center point of experience drops, and the boundaries of experience suddenly expand. Um, there might be a very clear seeing that there's no self there per se. But what's going to happen is that the selfing process is going to kick in and claim credit for it. And then there's often an identification with that selfing process. So now you become the person who has awakened, or the person who is enlightened, or the person who has very, very special insights. And off to the races once again we go. So if you find that happening, that's just another part of the journey to begin to watch that claiming process, watch that selfing process. Um, Once again, let's see what else. What else do I have here? Da, 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 da. Yeah, I'd I'd also like to invite you to be skeptical of spiritual experience, meaning when you meditate and when you do this stuff, you might experience rapture or strong feelings of awe or bliss or unity and all sorts of stuff. And many people kind of mistake that to be what it's about, but it's not. This is just about a perceptual shift. It's about a perceptual shift. It's an insight. It's a realization that then needs to get integrated into the way you express yourself in the world. So to use an analogy, and I came up with this when I communicated with a fellow explorer who teaches mathematics. So I have no knowledge about mathematics whatsoever. So when I talk about insights, we're talking about grade school level mathematical insights. But let's say that you're studying mathematics, and let's say that you're working on some sort of math problem, and then you suddenly get it. You see that particular, you go, you know, you might be ecstatic. You might feel tingling or rapture or have, ecstatic or blissful body sensations at the moment of that discovery. But those particular experiences are hardly the point, because the the insight you've had about mathematics, you might be using in 5 years or 10 years. You might be using that particular insights in neutral states of mind, in all sorts of states of mind. It really has nothing to do with the particular state of mind that you were in when the discovery, and the I thought, which is has a lot to do with the default mode network, uh, that takes credit for solving the math problem, has very little, if anything at all, to do with the unconscious processing and the reasoning that actually worked the math problem out. So so same thing here too. By all means, welcome these very interesting experiences that may arise, but ultimately it's not really about that. So I hope this video was useful, might help you to avoid some of the traps that are common on the paths of self-inquiry and meditation. If you have any questions or comments around this, feel free to add them wherever you find the video. If you're looking for some mentoring, if you'd like to explore this terrain, or see how you might apply it with clients, or if you're looking to make any changes for yourself, um, you can find me at provocativehypnosis.com. Until next time, have a great day.